Shavua Tov, Shavua Tov u'Mevorach. Good and blessed week. Is everybody all right? Are we good? For those who wonder what we were speaking about, there is this elderly man, this young man, who is just as older in age, who sits usually next to Bob. And his name is Mr. Mannering, Arnold. And he was in a car accident. He's Baruch Hashem fine, but he's going to be spending probably extended time, who knows, at a mission, which is a rehabilitation center on the corner of Northeast 24th and 156. And he's a people's person. And so if anybody has an opportunity to go visit him, he likes people to come over, say hello, and keep him entertained. You don't have to bring, I don't think so, but if you want, bring him. I don't know. I know. You can bring.
Well, he's fussy about what he's on a specific diet, so he doesn't eat the stuff he doesn't.
Right. So the stuff maybe doesn't. He just needs greetings and hello and you know, just a mitzvah visiting people. So there are people which go through a condition like this and they're very happy not to see anybody. And he's, you know, he's a different type of person, and that's the only reason I'm mentioning it. I usually don't make any PR about somebody being in the. I think I saw him yesterday. He likes, you know, he likes entertainment, and he's usually at class. When he was in the hospital, I suggested this rehab center. Nobody should need, but if anybody needs, not that I have any stock there. I don't even know if it's good. I hope it's a good place. It's just close to the area. People come to shul, to a class. They can drop in and say hello instead of being stuck somewhere, which is, you know, takes a lot of effort. Mission Rehab. It's right on the corner. On the corner of 24th and 156. You go out on north of 156, take a right. I know, for example, Avram was there 2 nights ago with his wife. Is it true? You see? You're getting update. He's very...
Nice food.
Okay, and now we're going to go learn. We are on Parshas Eikev. I'm sorry, Parshas Massei. Parshas Massei is Matot-Massei, is the end of Chumash Bamidbar. It starts on page 900, and it's going to go all the way till 934. And basically, by reading these two portions together, we are going to finish or conclude the 4th book known as the Book of Bamidbar. This is the 4th book. In English, it's called the Book of Numbers. Like we learned last week, there was numbers, there was counting, a census taking, and there were other numbers taking place, and now we are in the last 2 portions of this set of books. In essence, the next book, which is the final book, is called Mishneh Torah, the repetition of Torah. Even though the next book is also going to have some new inserts and additions and even new commandments, right, which were not mentioned till now, but they were all given as a part of the review on what took place in the last 40 years. So we are now, timeline, we are in the last year before entering the land of Israel. So this is the 40 years is finally coming to an end. The Parsha talks about a lot of interesting things, and obviously it's 2 Parshas and not so short Parshas, so there's a lot to discuss. For example, the whole idea of keeping your mouth, keeping to what comes out of your mouth, keeping vows, not making promises, is on page 900. Very important mitzvah. There's a positive mitzvah to keep vows. There's a negative prohibition not to violate any vows. Making sure that what comes out from your mouth is really sacred and holy is a subject. We have 2 tractates of Talmud just on the first 17 verses of this Parsha. One tractate is called Masechet Nedarim, the tractate of Neder, which deals with the subject of vows. The second tractate is called Masechet Shavuot, which deals with the subject of Shavuah. Shavuah means an oath, swearing. Two big tractates of Talmud, meaning this is not small ones, this is not even Talmudic subjects which sometimes deviate the subject and go into other discussions. Nedarim and Shavuot is Talmudic sub-tractates which are almost entirely concentrated on that concept. What's a vow? How do you nullify a vow? Who has the right to nullify a vow? What age did you make the vow? What's your status? You can make a vow against your wife, against your husband, against your children, against food. So many details, unbelievable details, which is all based on the beginning of this Parsha called Nedarim. Then the Parsha goes on with a special request by God to go and confront the Midianites for what they did after they caused so much trouble. There's the confrontation of these Midianites, and again introducing a very, very important subject of Jewish law known as koshering your dishes. Making dishes which were used for non-kosher use and transform them to become kosher. For example, you go and you buy, or you are being gifted, or you eat from a plate or a cup or a fork or a stove or which was used by a non-Jew to cook non-kosher food here, non-kosher meat. And now you want to use it for your own personal cooking. I'm on vacation, it's summer, right? We're all now in the beginning of August. Somebody's going to be traveling, I'm sure, somewhere, and you're going to get yourself a cabin or a hotel room or whatever way you're going to be traveling, and you want to use the kitchen for you kosher stuff because you are kosher observant. What do? Jewish law believes that the non-kosher flavor is not only what you taste when you eat non-kosher food, but rather the flavor gets immersed in the walls of the pots, of the cups, of the spoons and forks and pans. They all become absorbed with non-kosher flavor. When you take kosher meat, bought in QFC, you paid a lot of money for it, right? And you put it into the pot, which was used previously for non-kosher meat because somebody all stayed in the same cabin in the last 24 hours. What's going to happen is that flavor absorbed in the walls of the pot is going to release itself into your kosher meat and render it treif. So what do? Then I don't go on vacation, I eat my own pots and pans, or there's a process. That process was introduced to the Jews when they came back from the war against the Midianites. And they were piling up booty, spoil. And part of the spoil was dishes belonging to the Midianites, pots and pans. And now they're bringing it into their kosher kitchens, which is kosher already for the last 40 years since the Torah was given at Sinai. So Moses is telling them, hello, wait. Actually, at this time it's Elazar was giving the instructions. Turn on page 906. On verse 21, or 907 in the English. Elazar the Kohen said to the men of the legion who came to the battle, this is the decree of the Torah, which Hashem commanded Moses. And he gives them the laws of koshering utensils, that only the gold and the silver, the copper, the iron and the tin and the lead, everything that comes into the fire, you should pass through the fire and it will be purified. Meaning, you used an oven and the oven was serving non-kosher food. Not a problem. You don't have to throw out the oven. Turn the oven on. Let it burn down this non-kosher food. And then you can use it for kosher. And there is an order how to do it. Don't take me literally. Some ovens need a blowtorch in addition to its heat. Then you have the self-clean oven, which perhaps can work without any issues. You just turn on Solve Clean. The level of heat, the degree of heat which a Solve Clean oven gets, perhaps allows you to achieve a kosher process, a kosher procedure. Then you have a spot. What would you do? You want to release the flavor which was absorbed in it previously by the non-kosher food? You take another pot, fill it up with water, let the water boil. Once it bubbles, you take the previous pot, the non-kosher one, you dip it in. What happens at that moment? It releases the flavor, gets nullified in the water. You take out that non-kosher pot and Akus Pakus, it is all kosher now because there's no more flavor in it. That's called koshering. And this is all introduced in this Parsha, in the Parsha of Matos. You want to ask something? Ben? Oh, you're just excited. Good. Got me there. Yeah, this is all true stories. This is not made up stuff. This is all in the Torah. I'm not so smart to make up things like this. Then the Torah continues in chapter 32, page 910. They are just about to enter the land. Like I said before, this is in the last stage of the 40 years. How many tribes does Israel have? 12 tribes. They're all about to enter. 2 and another half of another tribe comes over to Moshe. They're not sure they want to go to Israel. After hearing and discussing and learning all about the importance of the land of Israel, they want to stay in Bellevue. What happened? The Torah begins, they had a lot of cattle. And they said, the place for the cattle right here, on the eastern side of the Jordan River, is where we can find a better place to take care of our cattle. And you can imagine Moses' reaction. Is that's what I need on my head now? Aren't we just about to enter and to finally make it? Didn't I go through enough? And he rebukes them. And he rebukes them. You can see on verse 7. He rebukes them very harshly. You're weakening everybody, he says. They're going to go fight. You're going to stay here. Don't you remember what happened 40 years ago with the spies? Kept him for 40 years in the desert. He's using very harsh words. You read this Parsha, it's almost like unusual to hear Moshe expressing such hardship, but sometimes that's what you got to do. You got to do what you got to do, as they say, right? But he gives in to them with a condition. The condition is if they're going to go fight a war in Israel, help us conquer it, make sure everybody gets a share, and then go back where you want. Even in the Kabbalah, in Hasidic philosophy, there's a whole discussion. How did it happen? How did holy tribes finally decided to settle in the desert when they had a chance to go into the land just for cattle? And Hasidic philosophy goes on with a whole discussion, beautifully comparing those 2.5 tribes to our forefathers who were shepherds, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Not only our forefathers were shepherds, the original forefathers of this tribe, the original fathers, were also shepherds. That's what they told Pharaoh. That's how they introduced themselves. We are shepherds. And the Kabbalah says that the reason that they were shepherds is not because they were interested in being shepherds and trying to make a living as being a shepherd, and that's why they would give up the advantage of going into the land because being a shepherd. No. They had a special type of soul, which their soul required that in order for them not to be influenced by this physical world is to be removed from the world, to be detached from the world. And that's what a shepherd does. A shepherd is with his sheep outside in the pasture, doesn't sit in downtown and dealing with office workers and employees and employers. He sits with his little flute and praises and sings to the Lord, like King David, and everybody, the sheep are going and grazing, and he only has to direct them to the right pasture. And where is the world? I don't see no world. I don't know about world. Facebook says, I don't care what Facebook says. I don't have Facebook. CNN says, what do I know about CNN? I know the sky, the grass, the sheep, and me and God. That's why they chose to be shepherds. That's why their service was shepherd. There was only one man, Chassidus says, who was the only man who was able to face the world and not get intimidated, but rather to transform it. No, among the tribes. Yosef. Joseph was in Egypt. He was the only one who was able to stand by Egypt and not be intimidated by Egypt. They couldn't understand it. When his brothers came down to Egypt, the verse says, Yosef recognized them, but they did not recognize Joseph. So Rashi brings from the Talmud, what happened? How come he recognized them and they did not recognize him? What does Rashi say? The beard. That's what Rashi said. Joseph grew a beard. He was a young lad, 17 years old, when they saw him last. Now this is 22 years later. From 17 till, 39, when they met him, he grew a nice beard. And sometimes someone grows a beard, you don't recognize him. But they were grown men when he left them, so maybe the beard became gray or white. But therefore, he was still able to see them. Right? That's what the Talmud says, and Rashi brings it. Hasidic philosophy says no, not no. Yes, but plus. They did not recognize him because they saw what a righteous person is, so they couldn't recognize how possible is it to remain righteous in such a crazy land like Egypt. They looked around and they saw Egypt. Egypt was called Ervat Haaretz, the depth of the earth. This was one of the lowest places as far as morality is concerned. You can imagine that people walked around in Egypt, that they were dressed in Egypt. I don't want to imagine. And then they see Yosef, a Yid, God-fearing Jew, speaks like a God-fearing Jew, looks like a God-fearing Jew. How possible? How is it possible? They couldn't recognize it. That's the meaning of they couldn't recognize it. It wasn't their type of service. But Yosef knew, and the Kabbalah goes on because their souls, Yosef's soul came from a world called Atzilut. In Atzilut, there is no mix of anything bad. It's purely good. Therefore, it doesn't have to be separated from the bad. It doesn't exist in his eyes. The brothers came from a world called Bria or Yetzira Asiya, which is already partially mixed. Some good, a lot of good, but some other tastes, other flavors too. So being that that's where their soul is rooted, so for them the world exists. And in order to abstain yourself from those challenges, they can only detach themselves and say, sorry, I got to be a shepherd. You're too much of a bother to me. Okay? Same thing, says Chassidus, happened to these two tribes that you're reading on this Parsha, on page 910. God, Reuven and Menashe came to Moshe because they were also similar types of souls. They wanted to stay in an isolated area across from the Jordan River, not to be occupied with building a country. Politics, monarchies, coalitions, oppositions, debates, Democrats, Republicans. I don't want to deal with that. I want to be a Yid. Let me stay here. And then we move on to the following final Parsha, which I'm going to discuss a little bit tonight. Page 918. The Parsha begins, chapter 32, verse 1. Eile Massei Bnei Yisrael. These are the journeys of the children of Israel. Asher yotzu me'eretz Mitzrayim letzivoisom, who went forward from the land of Egypt, according to their religions. Be'ad Moshe ve'Aaron under the leadership of Moses and Aaron. Vayichtov Moshe, says the Torah, and Moshe wrote, Moshe recorded, Es moitzoeyem lemaseyem. What did he record? They are going forward according to their journeys. Al pi Hashem, as the order of Hashem. Ve'ele maseyem lemetzayeyem, and these were their journeys according to their going forward. They traveled from Ramses and they arrived in Sukkot, and they traveled from Sukkot and they arrived here, and they traveled from here and they arrived here. The Torah goes on, my friends, 50 verses to describe where they camped and where they traveled from here to there, from there to here. 50 verses is being spent on what? On telling us the areas, the locations where they stopped. You know what 50 verses is? 50 verses for a story is a lot of verses. Anybody who reads the Torah knows the biggest story, creation of the world. The 6 days of creation, everything evolves around that story, right? The story of Genesis. How many verses does the story of Bereshit take place? 31 verses. That's it. Which is also a lot. 31. Then you have the story of the giving of the Torah. This is the basis of everything. The basis of Menschlichkeit, the basis of our history, the basis of our religion, the basis of our being a people. Everything centers around that story. You know how many verses describe the giving of the Torah in Parsha Yisro? 14 verses. That's it. The whole story is in 14 verses. Suddenly it comes this story, a Parsha which talks about where they traveled to where they traveled. And the Torah doesn't say what happened when they arrived. It just tells us from where to where, from here to there. Without any proportions. 50 verses? You're telling me, first of all, who needs to know that? You ever saw children, or even adults which act like children? You know how many stamps I have on my passport? I have my little boy, just came back this week from camp in New York. Israel, he's 8 years old. I said, no, how was it? He tells me, you know, I was in 5 states. 5 states? Yes. I started up in Washington. Mommy took me to a bar mitzvah in Florida. From there I spent Shabbos in Connecticut because she went to your sister. Then I went to the state of New York. So it was Washington, Florida, Connecticut, New York. Who was the 5th state? Oh, I drove by New Jersey or something. I don't know. On his way to the airport, when at visiting day. He was in 5 states. Unfortunately, there's no passport to sign. But, all the times you see, my kid, I have a son, Levi, he liked to travel when he was, before he got married. And sometimes, he just stopped somewhere to get somewhere else, and he was very excited. No, at least I got another step on my passport. Right, David Schneider? Collecting stamps on it? No, not you. You just travel to see the place. Very good. What is it important to know all these places? What reason? What are we going to gain from it? They don't teach us anything new. We are about to enter the land, and the Torah goes over and repeats 42 places. 42 spots. And everybody knows, maybe we spoke about it, I'm sure, in previous years, that the 42 is a special number. And all the great Kabbalists keep on repeating the Ana Bechoach, the prayer of Nechunya ben Akana, which is God's name, right, associated in the 42 arrangement of letters. And we know that this is the name, and I saw today an unbelievable saying in the name of the Mendel of Riminov, who says, Was it here? Where did I see it? Here or here? I think here. One of the great masters, the Ole Baal Shem Tov's Talmidim, they tell us that he told the students, I heard about it, but I didn't know. Oh, here. He brings that I heard from my great Rabbi Aflelov, who said, goes all the way back to the original Hasidic masters, that just like Moses wrote down all the travelings of Israel and it became a part of the Torah, it's part of the Holy Torah, so too is Elijah the prophet sitting all his life and writing all the travelings which is taking place by each and every single Jew. And when Mashiach is going to come, this is going to become a book that we are going to study from. Yes? You looking for new books? Jerry, you're creating a book. Avram, everybody, you're creating books. Elijah is writing down the what's it called? Ben, a new title for a book. A book. Elijah the prophet, he says. Eliyahu Navi says, and he's writing down, he's following you. Okay? Vayisu mitashken, vayachanu bebelview, vayisu mibelview, everything is being write down, and it's going to become, especially what happens to the Jewish people, it's going to become a part of Torah. It's going to become a part of Israel. This is what traveling is. What's the reason? This is a famous question which the commentaries are discussing. One of the famous Sephardic sages wrote a book called Tzror Amor, Reb Avram Saba. He was at the time of the expulsion of Spain, and his words are, Bekol HaTorah Kula, in the entire written Torah, he says, En davar she'ira'eh shelo letzorech kemo eile hamasaot. There's nothing in the entire Torah but sounds so unnecessary, he says, so unnecessary, like these 50 verses describing when we came to and what. 550 years of Sephardic Chacham expresses this question, like he says, everything in the Torah I can find meaning. This, come on. And the commentaries are discussing it. Amongst them, they have the Holy Rambam, Maimonides, in his book called More Nevuchim, the Guide to the Perplexed. Even he, in his philosophical approach, is trying to make sense of these 50 verses. What's going on over here? And the Rambam goes with his approach, which is a philosophical approach. He says, the nature of people is to forget the miracles which happened to them previously. Basically, the way Rambam writes, a person is too attached to his natural existence. As much that he likes a miracle, but it's very easy and very normal for him to detach himself from that miracle, to move on from the miracle. Life is not about miracles. Life is about being normal. I know I had a normal life. A good day, Baruch Hashem, went by. I ate, I slept, I learned, I worked. Move on. A miracle is good, but don't make my life a life out of miracles, okay? I don't want to have every day a miracle. I want to know that I had life and going through life in the order of life. And that's what the Rambam says, that historians will come to other generations and claim, what did they eat in the desert, the Jews? How do you know? How do you know? Who said they needed manna? They were probably camping right next to the border of the lands, whether the land of Moab, the land of Israel, and they were provided with food by their neighbors, or they purchased food from their neighbors. Says the Rambam in his Guide to the Perplexed, in More Nevuchim, says the Rambam, that is a very strong possibility that if the Torah would have not recorded where they traveled to where, realizing that in all those places there is no cities and there is no towns and there is no countries, so no one can sell you a boat and say that they were provided with food. They were in a desert. How do you know? The Torah says they traveled from here to there. What are those places? They're not nearby anywhere. So how were they eating? What were they drinking? Who took care of them? You're going to wonder. That's going to enhance you believe that there was somebody who provided for them, God. Says the Rambam, that's the reason why God ensured that those travelings are mentioned. Historians should never come and question those facts. Okay? A beautiful understanding. But still, if you want to tell us, if that's your purpose, to tell us that we stopped in all kinds of places where there was no food, and there was no drink, and there was no country nearby, how should verse 1 begin? On page 918. Eile chanayot bnei Israel. This is where the Jews camped. No, the Torah says Eile Massei. What does Massei mean? These are the journeys. You want to bring out the uniqueness of the camping or the uniqueness of the journey? According to the Rambam, what are we explaining? What are we trying to accomplish? That where they camped, they had nothing to eat, but God provided them. Then don't call it journeys. Then speak about the camping. It seems like the old story is about the traveling, the Massei. Why is that important? Rashi, in the beginning of the Parsha, verse 1, Rashi has his approach. He also was bothered with that question. You know, there's a book called What Bothered Rashi? Because not always does Rashi tell us what bothered them. Sometimes it tells you an insight that you have to get into Rashi's head. What bothered them that he shared that insight? It's actually a 5-volume book called What Bothered Rashi. Rashi, here in this case, it tells us what bothered them. What bothered them? What bothers us? What bothered the Rambam? What bothered all commentaries? Rashi says, in the name of Reb Moshe Adarshan, the first Rashi on this Parsha, Lama nichtevu Masai Salalu. Why is it necessary to record? This passport stamp, that passport stamp, that passport stamp. Why? 50 verses. What does Rashi say? Rashi has his own insight, also a beautiful insight. He says that the Torah wants to teach you how kind God was to us. Why? Because a person can think to himself, 40 years in the desert, every night they had to move elsewhere. They kept on wandering and wandering. In English, actually, what do they say? They call it wandering 40 years in the desert. Every day they had to move and travel. And people were probably exhausted from so much traveling. Comes the Torah and says, hello. Mapitom. They weren't wandering. And they weren't so bad. In 40 years, they just made 42 stops. And there were places among the stops where they were there. For example, 14 of the stops were just on the way from Egypt to Sinai. So this is short stops, as they say, right? And then in other places, they were, just on the 40th year. About 8 of them is just the 40th year, just making it to Israel. So in 38 years, they only traveled, says Rashi, 20 times. They had to pick themselves up 20 times. In 38 years, to pick yourself up 20 times. It's pretty good for a nation who is wandering the desert. Says Rashi, that's what the Torah wants to teach you. Look at God and realize how kind God is to you. Was to us. He didn't shake us through the desert. Sometimes a person goes through a desert and he walks and walks and walks. You speak to people who made their way from Yemen to Israel, who walked through the desert. There are stories of them, maybe movies. You see people who walk to try to escape Europe in time of World War II, in the snow, in the hills. They don't have a minute of rest. They lie down in one place, couple hours, put themselves together just to catch the breath and continuing traveling. I mean, Mr. Schneider is here. I wouldn't say, look at the people from Mexico making their way to the border. We all know what it means to travel. And here comes the Torah and says, no, you realize what I did for you in the desert. We actually have a holiday called Sukkot. And the whole holiday is to celebrate what? How God cared for us during those 40 years. Nachon? That's the mitzvah of Sukkah. And to show that God is kind to us. He respects us even when we don't deserve. He sheltered us from the sun, from the rain, by having those clouds hovering us. Right? This is the mitzvah of Sukkah. So comes the Torah and says, it's not only Sukkah. I'm now going to put 50 verses out of my little pen, which doesn't have too much ink, since I'm writing everything so precisely. In all the laws, I'm trying to incorporate a few words of code. But here I'm going to let my ink pour. Get poured more and more to share that message that what? That in 20 years, I carried you through. I'm sorry, what does Rashi say? In 38 years, I only picked you up 20 times. You have to pack your suitcase 20 times. Pretty good. Nachon? This is what Rashi says. But after all, this is also not enough of an explanation. Because, if you're really kind, I would be happy not to have to move, not to have to move around altogether. Actually, those who moved apartments know that it's not easy to move. I remember when I moved to Seattle, in 1994. I lived in one apartment. A year later, I moved to another house. It's only the fourth that I think the third place that we finally settled, which is also a miracle. I consider it a miracle. My parents kept on moving. They had one bedroom. Family reached maximum size, 5 kids. That's it. You can put them all in one. Into a 2-bedroom, into 3-bedroom. We always moved. We moved. And it wasn't easy. Boxes and undoing and what do I have to tell you? What? Packing and unpacking. We shouldn't know. Are you okay? Comes the Torah and says, God was kind. Maybe he shouldn't be so kind. Maybe that should have also not be. Maybe he should have taken care of us and be even nicer. And you know what? Nachmanides, which is also a lot of times trying to make sense of insights into Torah, he's honest and clear. I don't say the others were not honest, but you know what he writes on this verse? Ramban, if you look in the Ramban on this Parsha, he says this whole idea of writing the travelings and recording from where to what. He says God told Moses to write it, but he says Adayin lo nidgala sodo. The secret to why it was written is yet not uncovered. I don't know. Ramban, look in Ramban, he says those words. He calls it a secret, meaning there has to be some secret, some meaning to that. And he says clearly, I don't know. He knew what Rashi said. He knew what the Rambam said. He probably heard what others said. He said, I steal. Whatever way you're going to explain me, I don't know. Adain. That's what he said. Lo nidgal. And he says that's why the verse begins, verse 2, that Moses wrote it according to the order of God. Why does the verse have to mention specifically that it was written according to the order of God? Says the Ramban, says Nachmanides, because the Torah wants to tell us that the only reason that Moses wrote it is because God told him to write it. If not, if God telling him to write it, he would not write it either, because it doesn't make any sense. Right? Even he said, God told us he has to do it. You listen to what God said. But why? Yanyete palimaya. I don't understand. I don't know. My friends, there's a famous thing which I shared probably in previous years. There is a small book which was written by a grandson of the Baal Shem Tov. And I believe I should have it here. I for sure had it. Oh. This is the book. You see this book? This book belonged to my grandfather. I still have his name. This was called Degel Machane Ephraim. Degel Machane Ephraim is a book, small tiny book, but it was written by a great Hasidic leader with the name of Moshe Chaim Ephraim, who was the rabbi of Sidulkov, the son of Odel, the daughter of the Baal Shem Tov. So this is really one of the most authentic, classic books which we have directly teachings from the one who heard it and recorded it of the son of the Baal Shem Tov. According to this week's Parsha, the holy Degel Machane Ephraim quotes this verse, and he says, and I'm going to read you and translate 5 lines from what he says.
It's in Yiddish, right?
No, it's in Hebrew. It's in Hebrew. This was written, Sidulkov. Sidulkov is in Ukraine, not far on the way next to Shipitovka, Slavitu, Koritz, that area. I drove by it. I wasn't there. So what it says, Achda, he says, you should know. Shamati b'shem Adoini Avi Zikni Zatzal. I heard from my great grandfather of blessed memory. My Zayde. Who is my Zayde? Ki kol amasois oyu membeis. All the travelings were 42. Veheim etzel kol adam miyoy mivoldoi atshuva eloi lomai. These 42 campings and travelings is traveling. My Zayde told me that every single Jew travels from the day he's born until the day he dies. And he starts going. We left Mitzrayim. That's the first travel. What is Mitzrayim? Egypt. So he says, no, Mitzrayim is your mother's womb, which is like Egypt, Meitzar. It's also a limited, concentrated, bordering area. This is when we left. And then we travel from place to place, and we get finally to the 42nd place, which is the land of Israel. And then it takes certain names. It's unbelievable the way he translated, Baal Shem Tov translates certain places based on their names. For example, I don't want to share the whole thing, not enough time, but take for example, they traveled to Midbar, page 920. Vayisru b'Midbar Sinai. They journeyed from the wilderness of Sinai and encamped where? In a place called Kivrois Ataiva. What is the place? A location? Rabbi says, no, that's a part of our journeys. You know what a kever is? Kever is a grave site. You know what a taiva is? Taiva is desiring something negative. It's called a taiva. He says, you know what kivros a taiva means? They came to a place and we are moving on to life, that we are reaching a place where we buried our taivas. It's a kever for our taivas. And they continue from Kivres HaTaiva, and they camping in Chatzerot, right? Mm-hmm. What does Chatzerot mean? Chatzer. What's a Chatzer mean? A yard. Where is the yard leading to? To a house. So the Baal Shem Tov says, that's what happens in life. You wonder, how am I going to bury my desires? If you camp in a courtyard, you look at this world as a courtyard to the world to come. That's Chatzer. And that's how he goes on, continuing, explaining in the Degel Machane Ephraim, talking about the way Zayde went on to explain that there is a reason. The Ramban says, I don't know the reason. The Baal Shem Tov says, I will tell you what the reason is. The reason is that it was written to teach us how to travel. In other words, the traveling was not written to record their journey. It was recorded to describe and to lead us in our journey, in our life, from morning to night, from birth to after birth. We are all traveling on a long road, and each part of the road has a stop. He says they came from Moro. Remember the place called Moro? Right, in verse 9. It says Moro. There are places which is mar means like maror. There are places which are bitter. Vayachanu bemisko, matok. There are places which just part of the journey which is sweet. And onward and onward. But what does it say? He really says something more than what he writes. This is really the core. Go back to verse 1 a second. The Torah tells us, Eile Massei Bnei Yisrael asher yotzu me'eretz Mitzrayim. This is the journeys of the people of Israel which came out of Egypt. What was the purpose of these journeys? To leave Egypt or to get to Israel? Sure? To leave Egypt, you could have ended up in Uganda. Or in Azerbaijan. Who else was the countries? It wasn't just to leave Egypt. Obviously, the 42 steps and the traveling was to get to Israel. So why does the Torah begin in emphasizing the fact that this is the travelings of us leaving Egypt? Especially it says Massei. Massei is the travelings, the journeys in the plural. How many journeys did we make from leaving Egypt? One. Once you get out of Egypt, you're done. Now you're moving from the next place after Egypt to what follows it. You don't make, imagine somebody is, traveling from Israel to Seattle. And he stops along the way in London, in Cyprus. How many travels did he did from Israel to get to Seattle? One. Left Israel. Wherever the first place you stopped, that was journey number one. Then you continued from Cyprus to London, from London to France, from France to Greece, to Greenland, until you finally made it to Seattle. Why does the Torah say, Asher yotzu me'eretz Mitzrayim? Especially if you look in the verse, it's something very interesting. Vayichtov Moshe. Moshe wrote, verse 2, Et motzaehem lemaseyhem. What does it mean? He wrote their goings for it according to their journeys. What does it mean? Vayichtov Moshe es motzeehem lemaseyhem. Meaning Moshe describes how they were not traveling, their journeys. And what does the verse continue? Ve'eile maseyhem lemotzeehem. And this is their journeys according to their going forward. It starts by describing where they left, and then it continues in the same verse. No, actually we're going to talk about where they went. You want to talk about where they came from, or you want to talk about where they ended up to? The verse is very confusing, kind of. There's a famous mashal given by the great Magid of Duvna. Magid of Duvna was known as the great darshan, the great everything, for every insight, for every question, he had a parable. Everything was with a parable. There's a book, I used to like it when I was a child, I got it for one of my birthdays. Mishlei HaMagid Meduvna, the parables of the Magid of Duvna. They didn't tell you the inside, they only shared the parables, but like an amazing story. The Magid of Duvna talks about this verse. He says there was once a father Nebuch who had a child, and the wife, the mother of this child, died. And he got married to another wife. But the second wife was not nice to the child. Not only she was nice to the child, she was doing a lot of trouble to the child. He had a very difficult life with her. She bothered them, and the father realized eventually that the only solution for his son is that the son should find a wife to himself, get married, then he's going to have his own wife, so he's going to remove from the father's second wife, and hopefully have a calm life. And here there's a shidduch was brought up, a match was brought up somewhere in a different country, and now they start traveling. They start traveling, and they go in their wagon, and they go, and they go, and they go. And the son asked the wagon rider, tell me, how far are we already from the house that we left? Are we 10 kilometers away? Are we 20 kilometers away? How many kilometers are we already traveling away from where we left? And he responds, at the same time, the father of the child turns to the wagon rider and says, tell me, how many kilometers are we away from where we need to arrive? And he responds to them, what's the difference? Why is he asking about where we left and this guy is asking when to where we arrive? Because the child is looking, what is his mission, what is he trying to accomplish? To get out of this house, to be away from this mother who is making his wife miserable. So for him, the important part is, tell me how far. For the father, it's important to have his son get married. So he wants to know, how far I am. How far am I getting? The question is basically, obviously, Moshe Rabbeinu knew and understood the advantage of Eretz Yisrael. So he obviously keeps on talking about the travels which gets you to your destination. For the Jewish people, at that point, the more important part for them was, get me out of Egypt. Right? So for them, the recording of the story is more about, tell me where I'm coming, how far am I already away from where I came, from where I left. But anyway, I just want to share one word, which is a word, an insight, a lot of insight, but this is just a short word which will give us the idea of here, why this Parsha is so important. People look at life and they think that life is meant to be one stop. I left somewhere, I arrived somewhere, then either I made it or I didn't make it. If they make it, they are happy. If they didn't make it, they are depressed. And then we all know that that's not as life works. For some people, yes, location-wise, it can be the same location for many years. But every couple of months or every couple of years, something stalls, something stops, and you gotta maybe start something new. Something changes. And I'm not talking only bad things, even good things. This advantage, this idea, this accomplishment, this change. This is life. And you wonder, so what's the real story of life? Am I supposed to be somewhere and accomplish? Or perhaps all those stops and all those journeys is just a part of the same mission. All those dots are important and equally important to get us to our final accomplishment. We all know the story of the Megillah, right? One of the beautiful lessons the Rabbi always learned from the Megillah was the story of Purim, is to teach a person that life is made of small little sections, sometimes even detached and separated from the other. Different locations, different experiences, different opportunities. And the story of the Megillah tells us, if you isolate the dots, you're not going to end up with a good story. If you're going to stop and say, oops, Ahasuerus decreed all Jews to die, and you don't read the rest, I guess we all die. Esther was taken to Ahasuerus' house. Oh, Nebuch, a young Jewish lady, has to end up with this chaya, with this person, with this Ahasuerus. Patience. Hello. Let's add another few dots, and suddenly this Esther, being in the house of Ahasuerus, becomes the savior of our people. This is a lesson which there is a number of places in Torah which is specifically there to make up that statement that there is no extra parts or unnecessary parts or unexpected parts in the story of life. Everything in life adds up together, sometimes from this way, from the other way, from up, from down. Somehow, with Hashem's help, one day, we believe that it's going to happen, Mashiach comes, but for some people, they can even see it before. A full circle is coming around. Aha! Now I understand. This is how it leads. I want to tell you a story that happened to me on Sunday. This past Sunday. It's summer, long night, so I try in the evening times, not when I have a class, to go visit people in their homes. If they need a mezuzah, usually people that I don't meet. There's a boy over here, his name is Yeshua Rubin, he's in town, he's looking what to do, so it's good to go with somebody else sometimes. I say, Yeshua, we're going to do it together this week. We went yesterday, we went on Monday, on Sunday. I went looking for a house all the way in East Redmond of a woman which her husband died, and I didn't hear from her or see her since. And I was hoping to see her in the house and to say hello and just to see how she's doing. She doesn't answer my phone either. I come to the house and she's obviously not there. The house is dark, the shades are down, no one answers the door. So now I'm already in Trilogy, East Redmond. So what is it, a half-hour drive from here almost? 20 minutes, 25 minutes. I said, you sure? We've got to find another year there. Okay? Went down a few doors. Yes, there's a Jew. I walk in. This is a Jew which I see every year in our synagogue, Yom Kippur, sometimes even Rosh Hashanah. I didn't see him throughout the year. I don't see him. Used to work at Microsoft. I don't see him in Microsoft either. He doesn't work at Microsoft anymore. I once saw his wife, and we didn't. I can say we didn't connect. I said hello. She didn't answer. Whatever it is. Anyway, I don't know the story. He opens the door. Rabbi, not Mashiach. Don't worry. I call Beseder. I just moving around. Homes, looking, maybe in a mezuzah, maybe just to see how you're doing. Very nice. I see your wife. He says, come in. I said, I see your wife is there. Ask you if it's okay for us to come in. So she says, yes. We came in. I sat down. I said, hello. And we spoke, and she's quiet. Doesn't say much. I say, did you put on tefillin? Yes, put on tefillin. So while this boy, Yeshua, is putting on tefillin with his yid, I tried to engage in conversation with this lady. And she tells me, yes, I just came back. My father just passed away. I just finished the Shiva. I came back. I say, oh, your father was Jewish? He says, sure. And my mother actually passed away a month ago. So I said, wow, now I know why I'm here, to offer my condolences to you. And she says, yes, I'm very pleased that you're here. I mean, you never told me that your parents died. She doesn't, maybe in a connection. We sat down, we spoke. I learned that both your parents were in a famous Jewish town. There's a song that everybody knows maybe. Belz, mein steht alle Belz. There's a still small town in Ukraine called Belz. There's a song about this Belz that all the Shistin and all the Jews from Ukraine knew about. Okay? And this is the word from that city. And she grew up, she was still the age of 17. She was in that city. She came to America in the 70s. 1971, she came to Brooklyn, got married to this man, and both parents just passed away. And I walk out and I say to this young man, Yeshua, I say, you see, we thought that we're going to East Redmond to meet someone. No, the person wasn't there. If she would have been there, probably would have never go knock on this door. Now you see, travelings, the Rabbi organizes travelings, all kinds of dots, bringing them together So you can meet someone who never just lost a parent, or organize for someone to say Kaddish now for both parents. Hopefully they should light candles before, whatever. This is what the Rebbe says. This is the story of Matot-Massei. When a person comes to life, the important message of the Torah is that life is a puzzle. But it's not a puzzle that each part is detached from the other. It's a complete puzzle that by connecting all the dots together, you end up with a beautiful picture and design. We made it into Israel, in spiritual Israel, made it into life. And the Torah mentions the spaces is to know that sometimes it takes 42 journeys. And you're going to stop and continue. And then again stop. And maybe fall, and maybe stumble, and maybe get up, or maybe not get up. Keep on trucking. Massei, go. Payachole. Right? Keep on going. You fell. Okay, take a day off. Okay. Don't come to class next week. Not interested. Don't come. But come back in 2 weeks. Don't get stuck. Don't get stuck. I want to give a little announcement in the name of my friend Avram Abramov. Tuesday? Okay, so no announcement. In that case, he's making an announcement that his mother's yahrzeit this coming week. So Shabbos is going to be a Kiddush in honor of his mother. And next Tuesday night is going to be a yahrzeit meal in honor of your mother. Okay, I thought he was doing it on Wednesday. That I was going to give a special program for next Wednesday. But
we can make a Tuesday.
No, we'll have a Wednesday class and a Tuesday class. I want to wish you all a Laila Tov. We will continue speaking on the subject